Welcome to another Wednesday webinar here at ESU 8. My name is Katie Morrow, and today I'm excited to talk to you all about teaching and learning with iTunes U. Many of you may be familiar with iTunes U and the fact that it is the world's largest repository of online educational content available to us as teachers, but we probably don't take full advantage of what it has to offer. So in the next half hour, I hope to give you a brief introduction to what iTunes U is, how to navigate it and find information on its many spaces and different content types, how to create a course that can be created completely within the iTunes U app, and then of course how to teach using this delivery method. Whether you teach with iPads in an iPad or iPod touch-enabled environment, or whether you just have access to an iOS device for yourself professionally, there's something here for everyone. It is definitely a tool that can be more fully utilized when you have access to the iOS learning environment for your students, but you can still find great information throughout the next half hour that you can use yourself professionally on your own personal device. So with that, we're going to get started. The resource that I'm showing you right now on my screen with the outline and some links will be available on the ESU8 webpage after today's webinar so that you can access the links as well. But I'm going to go ahead and switch over to my computer screen so that you can experience iTunes like I do from my laptop first. And then about halfway through, I will switch into my iPad so we can view it from that point of view as well. So we'll go ahead and get started with my laptop screen. And I'm going to start in iTunes. This is typically what we think of for iTunes. We think of music and movies, and that is the way it started, of course. But when you launch the iTunes app, know that you can navigate between the different media types up here on the left and come across this mortarboard cap, which is the designation for iTunes U. If you don't see it at first, click on the three dots and you see even more additional media types. And then from there, when you switch over to the right-hand side of your screen, you'll notice the difference between the iTunes Store and My iTunes U. So My iTunes U is showing me the things that I've already downloaded and subscribed to and that live and reside on my machine. Whereas the iTunes Store is everything online in iTunes that is inside of that iTunes U category. And this works the same with any of these. If I went to music, I can see the difference between my music here locally on my machine and the music available out on the iTunes Store. But I just thought that that's worth pointing out because when they did some updates to the iTunes platform, that wasn't very clear at first glance. So we are in the iTunes U section of iTunes, and we're on the store side, so externally, out on the web. The first way to use iTunes is just to use a simple search. And if we were going to teach a topic coming up next week, I'll just go ahead and choose plants as an example here. You can just enter your search query right within iTunes. But I want to point out that when you do that, when you search iTunes, it's searching all of iTunes. So it's searching not only the courses and iTunes U materials and collections, but also apps that have to do with plants, Apple Watch apps, TV episodes, songs, movies, and books, and podcasts. So it's everything. Now that's nice to give us a quick glance. But we're talking today about iTunes U, the free side of iTunes. And so we want to probably filter that list after we type in our search term just by clicking on iTunes U here on the right-hand sidebar. This gets us down to just the iTunes U content specific to iTunes U. And of course, the free content, what we're using for educational purposes. So you'll see here that we now have just two categories of content. We have courses, some courses about plants, any age levels, everything from, I think there's a second grade course here about plants all the way up to higher ed and college type courses. And the materials within those then are listed linearly in a list below that. And then the second type is collections. And this is the older type of iTunes U information. And it's basically just grouped around a topic by a provider. It might be a set of videos typically, or podcasts, audio files, or it could be PDFs. So those file types are grouped together and then shared on the iTunes U platform. And right below those collections then are the individual, what they call episodes. So each one of these you can individually get by clicking on the Get button. Notice that everything is free. If you do see something that says iOS only, then you have to be on an iPod Touch or an iPhone or an iPad to access that. Or you can click on the collection itself just directly and then see all the elements within it. Like I said, either a video, an audio file, or a PDF. So using the back arrows does help you navigate back. And I can go back again and get back to that main page on iTunes U. And so I do encourage you to use the search. It will help you quickly find things, but it isn't the only way to experience all that iTunes U has to offer. So probably my next piece of advice is to use the sidebar over here on the right-hand side of this main iTunes U start page, and in particular, 3 categories that it's split up into. There is the universities and college section, which was where iTunes U originated. Here, universities who wish to have a presence put up their content in this public space, and then we can search for it by the name of the university. If I went directly to Yale University, for example, then I would see the courses and collections that Yale University has offered up into this free space for everyone to share. That can be handy if you are following a particular university, but a little bit more difficult if we're looking for something on a certain topic area or subject. Another way, though, to search and browse the iTunes U content is to use the K-12 section. This is very similar, except it's built for elementary and high schools. Again, you have to know the name of the institution or the provider that's sharing the content, and then you go to that name alphabetically. I'll just show you O'Neill Public Schools as an example. Obviously, this is where I've been familiar with and had experience with sharing iTunes U content for the past few years. And you can see here on our high school site that you can find out information from courses that we've authored within O'Neill Public Schools and then shared publicly. This isn't everything. These are just the things that we shared publicly. And then underneath of that, you can see collections. Those collections might be things like audio podcasts from a math class, or reading audio clips that students have created to share stories that they've written, or this, for example, this collection is just PDFs. It's newsletters authored by students. So these are the collections, and up above are the courses, and then the individual elements are listed in different ways on different institution pages. It's nice to know that any school can have a presence on iTunes U if they choose to. It just needs to be cleared through Apple, through a process, along with administration, and then have somebody to manage it. And it's a great way to kind of break down those boundaries of your school walls and share on beyond just your local school and your local students. So that's the K-12 section of iTunes U. But there's also a third section on the side here. It's called Beyond Campus. And personally, as an educator, this is probably my favorite way to browse iTunes U. In here are resources that have been shared by museums, nonprofit institutions, all kinds of third-party places that aren't schools or colleges. So you could go to PBS, for example. And I'm sorry, that link didn't, it just looks like it wants to kick me off there, not come up live. Let's try another one. Let's try the NASA History Program Office and see what resources they've shared. So here we have different downloads that are available, all free, all for education purposes. And if we know that we're looking for science-related content, this might be a great way to find something other than simply searching for it. So looking in the Beyond Campus section of iTunes U is a great place to get started. I personally recommend the Apple Distinguished Educators site on iTunes U on the Beyond Campus section, which is not coming up live, but I do have a link to that as well when it appears to be cooperating better later on. Great resources there by educators shared for other educators. Do not overlook, though, the banners and icons that you see on the main iTunes U page. These are put there for a reason because they're high quality. They've often been curated or aggregated by professionals, and it is a quick way to highlight the best content on iTunes U. For example, I was just mentioning the Apple Distinguished Educator section of iTunes U, but here you could go to a specific collection called Lessons for the Classroom, where courses authored by educators have been offered up in this public space for other educators to use with their students, or in some cases, just learn from themselves. So here's some courses on best practices and professional development that anyone could enroll in and learn from, written by another educator, typically an iPad using educator. There's also lessons for primary ages, middle school, secondary, and if you scroll across these, there's identified by colors for the different subject areas. This collection is definitely getting ready to grow. You'll notice when you click on any of these lessons, let's just choose one here, let's choose this 3D geometry unit, that because it's an iTunes U course, I can see the individual materials listed, and I can get the things that are available for my Mac, for my laptop, a PDF, a video for sure, but things that are available only on iOS, it'll tell you iOS only. And for those, you do have to go to the iTunes U app like we will be doing here shortly, and then enroll in the course there or subscribe to it there. And we'll definitely be covering that in a second. But I wanted to show you how even without an iPad or an iOS device, you can still benefit from some of the content that's been collected in these courses and is showcased on iTunes U. So don't be afraid to try out the scrolling banners. There's some great lessons here on getting started teaching with the iPad. Sorry about that. In this tab right here. So if you teach, for example, high school math, you can have a series of lessons on what to do with the iPad for those types of teachers, or courses from college education, or app development with the Swift programming language. And these are changing often, so check back frequently to see what content is being showcased there. Also, as you scroll down, you'll notice earlier I was just focusing on the sidebar, but in the middle of your screen are some additional tabs and buttons where, again, it has that focused kind of feel to it. Somebody has already collected the resources for you, and they're grouped together specifically for educators in this section. I'll click on this first button here. You have books for educators, free books by educators, lesson ideas, again, those lesson courses we were just looking at, using apps in the classroom, resources, content creation. Again, already collected for you so that you don't have to do such deep searching and you can just browse instead. You'll notice new content that's featured above here, just all kinds of ways to look around. The only thing that you'll notice that is missing is just the time to do so. And I do acknowledge that getting the most out of iTunes U does take time. Don't be afraid to designate a little bit of time to that. Allow yourself time to really search and see what's out there. Or the next time you're looking for some teaching resources, just make a quick stop on the iTunes app and just look there first. And you might be surprised about the great content that's available. Now, how to kind of capture it all and use it for your students. Well, that's where the iTunes U app comes into play. And so for this section, I'm going to go ahead and switch over into my iPad. And I'm still going to be sharing my screen with you, but by using the AirServer app, I'm going to use AirPlay and just show you my iPad screen instead of my laptop screen. So now you'll be noticing that what you see is what I see on my iPad. And there you can see it coming live there. I'm going to go ahead and get started with the iTunes U app. It's the orange mortarboard icon in the bottom middle of my iPad screen, my home screen. And this is a free app that doesn't come on your iPad or your iPhone, but you can definitely download for free from the App Store, and I encourage everyone to do so. Also, make sure that you update it. Make sure that it has that the orange icon, the updated icon. This is the iTunes U 3.0 version, the most recent version, and it's the one that will most match what I'm going to show and show that it's available for you. So running across the bottom, you'll notice that I can see my courses, which are all of my courses. These are the ones that I'm the instructor of, that I've created, and ones that I've just enrolled in, that I am a student in. So when I've attended a training, or when I've tried to learn from the resources of other educators online, then they all show up here. If I switch to the second tab, where it says instructor, looking at the ones that just I myself am an instructor of. And you can see that I'm signed in to my iTunes U account in the upper right-hand portion of the screen. And then listed here are all of my courses, along with the number of posts, discussions, students, and materials. It's nice to see the students enrolled in your courses. It's pretty powerful to know that content that you're willing to share with the world can go far beyond your small town or school. You can see this in some of mine, and I'm always amazed at why 11,000 people would be interested in learning about teaching writing with the iPad, but they are. And it's really great to see a greater benefit to your teaching, I believe, and the same for our students for their learning, so that when they share information through the iTunes U platform, they know they have a really large audience to open up the purpose of what they're creating. So courses can be anything. I really recommend that when you're getting started, that you start small. As with anything, don't try to take on teaching your entire fourth grade science class via iTunes U. Rather, start with a unit or a chapter even, or even just one project. So here you can see a course on plate tectonics, or here one writing project of writing interactive stories, interactive fiction with my junior high students. I'm going to go ahead and click on that one as an example. The backbone of any course is its outline. So if I click on the outline section of my sidebar here on the left, then I get to view the entire outline at a glance. And that outline has to be entered first when you create a course, which I'll show in a second. But first, I just want to show you the finished product so you can see where it goes. That outline is so critical because you can't add posts or assignments until you have an outline to do so, even if it's a simple outline. Getting started, and then next, and then finish, or something to that effect. Then you can organize your posts and your information based on your outline. Also, I might mention that when you're in the landscape view of your iPad and when you're looking at it horizontally, you get to see the sidebar and the outline while you're viewing things in the main part of your screen. But if you flip your iPad horizontal or vertically, and now I'm looking at it in portrait view, you no longer see that extra information on the side. So I always recommend to my students, and I enjoy myself, to look at it in landscape view. If you're missing something, maybe just try rotating your iPad screen. So notice I switched over here to posts. So those same outline topics that I showed you in outline are still listed on the side, and now along with them are the posts associated with them. So for the project introduction, there are 3 posts. For warming up, there's 4. Brainstorming your story elements, there's 2, and so on. Each post has its own clickable, expandable view. So when I go into that, then I see the text. Maybe there's a link inside of there. And then there's an assignment where the materials can be attached. So in this case, the students would click on the video and watch it. And I don't know if this will play through or not. It's probably not critical that we watch the video. We're doing a lot of mirroring of content. And thanks for watching that video. It's just one example of how you navigate and use an iTunes U course. But iTunes U courses can be built and created both on the Mac and the iPad. All you need is an Apple ID. Any teacher can sign in to the iTunes U Course Manager website with their Apple ID, and they can publish their first course. Now, I don't want it to be intimidating to you. It sounds like you're creating, like I mentioned before, a semester's worth of materials, and that's not it. It can sometimes just be the container for a set of resources that you use for a workshop or to deliver staff development or to work with a professional learning group that a PLC that you're working with at school. Or it can just be resources to go along with one project for your students. So start small. One of my simplest courses here is just the stages of the writing process: pre-writing, drafting, revising, editing, and publishing, with the posts tying apps, suggested apps to each of those stages. So a course doesn't have to be complex. It can just be a really nice container to help you, a digital locker maybe, to help you organize materials to share with your learners, whether they're fellow professionals or students. Now, whether you're on the iPad or the Mac like I am now, when you want to start that first course for yourself and try it out, you just go down to, on the Mac, on the iPad you go to the plus symbol, and on your Mac you scroll down and you say, I want to start a new course here. So you can name your course whatever you want. I'll just call this ESU 8 for today. You can give it a department, and then if you are just independently creating a course, you won't have any institutions listed here. The benefit is if you get affiliated with an institution, for example, O'Neill Public Schools, then you have unlimited students, unlimited storage space, and unlimited courses that you can create. But most of us can do just fine to get started without getting affiliated, and then we can always add that later on. So this is saying that if we do want this course to go public later on, then O'Neill Public Schools is the ones who would have to publish it on the iTunes U storefront on their site page. The learning level, of course, and the language is required element. The category is just to help people find it later on. These you can always change as well. We'll just do this for now. And then a description, a short description. Now, before you can make your course public, you do need an image for your course, but I don't need it right now, so I'm just going to leave that blank, and I can come back to it later before I want to make it published. This course can be self-paced, where the learners work through it on their own, or it can be in session, where there's actually notifications that come across with certain dates. And of course, the new power in iTunes U courses is to enable students who are enrolled in them the ability to discuss and add comments and do some hand-in features I'll mention in a second as well. Licensing is up to you. I'm just going to go ahead and hit save. And I do have to choose a license. I'll do an attribution non-commercial share alike. That's usually the Creative Commons licensing I choose. Oh, sorry. ESU 8, Ed Tech, and it is English. Why am I getting an exclamation mark there? There we go. So now I have my course, empty course, created on my bookshelf here, and I can go in now and build that outline first. Notice the red exclamation mark is really guiding you to create the outline first. You have to. First, second, and third, or even just start here, next, and finish. And from there, I'll hit save. We're done. Now I can go into posts, and from each of these sections, add a post that has text, a title, definitely an assignment or a task if I want the learners to do so, another description if I want to, and here's where I attach materials. The options for adding materials are either anything you can upload from your computer. Just know that if it's going to be a public course, that you are sharing it then with the world, potentially through iTunes. So you need the rights to it, obviously. You can search the iTunes store for any content that's already available there, and you can do the searching right from within your course creation. You can put a specific link to anything on iTunes or on the internet here, and it'll link to it. Therefore, if you don't have the rights, you can at least point to it, and it still lives and resides with the owner online. Or you can go to your materials. And if you've authored other courses in the past, anything that you've added to any course will be listed in your My Materials section, and you can easily link to it here in this assignment. That's as easy as it is. After you've added those posts with the assignments and materials attached, then all of your materials will show up in your materials list, sorted out by the content type, and you have some administrative rights here on your course, whether or not you want to enable grading and hand-in for students, if students can automatically be enrolled when they ask to join your class, and things like that. It's very simple. It's free. It's definitely something that can make the iPad a better learning tool for your learning environment if you have access to them for your students, because students don't need to leave the iTunes U app to complete an assignment. They don't need to leave the iTunes U app to view a video from iTunes U. They don't need to leave the iTunes U app to take notes, to share content with you as the instructor. They can do it all from within that one space. They get notified when there's things that come up that are due, and it's just a great tool for sharing the learning beyond the classroom. Now, there are some new features with the iTunes U 3.0 that have come out, and I recommend that you use this link from Apple just to see what's new. The main things are that you can now do homework hand-in. So you'll see some screenshots here on Apple's website, how when you attach an assignment, for example, this is a handout on the parts of a flower, then the details, of course, go around it. You can also add images now to the posts, so it makes it more graphically appealing, visually appealing for the students. And then students can annotate right within the iTunes U app. If your iPads are new enough and everything is in place and this feature is enabled, then students can write their answers and then go ahead and just hand it right back into you through iTunes U. Then you as the instructor have this additional section where you can administer grades, individually message students, and see who has handed things in, has all at one glance. This was not possible in the past. So iTunes U was sometimes criticized to be a one-way delivery tool for educators. It's definitely become more of a two-way delivery tool now. It has a lot of possibility. Getting closer to a full-fledged LMS. I wouldn't say that it's that yet, but it does have more potential if you're using it internally in private spaces. So those are private courses. Now, don't be afraid if you aren't comfortable yet building courses that you share either privately or publicly, go ahead and learn from one. Enroll in one yourself. Search the iTunes U catalog for things that might benefit you, just to experience on your iPad as a learner first, and then decide what's important for your students. If you ever need any support, definitely use this iTunes U Getting Started guide. It's a probably, 12-page PDF. Very straightforward and walks you through how to get started, what to do next, what to do after that in order to build an iTunes U course and use the many tools that are available and the different settings and options that are open to you. If you have any troubles at all, there's a great support section online on Apple's website as well, and you can get support for iTunes U either as just a learner searching it yourself, navigating it like we started with today, or using that course manager to build, or eventually when you want to make those courses public and affiliated with your institution, how to put them up into the public site manager space. So with this short overview, I hope you've gotten a taste and a feel for what's possible with iTunes U. I know it's not the solution for every learning environment, but it is free and it is rich with content, rich with possibilities. And many of us that do have access to iOS devices, we're silly not to see what's available there and try to build on it and make it even better for our students. So thank you to everyone who attended today. If you have time and you do have questions, I would be willing to try and share them. I do notice that Chris asked about the link. I will share definitely the link for this entire handout, like I mentioned, with the recorded version of this webinar. So I will post it on the ESU8 Wednesday webinar page and on the ESU8 Instructional Technology page. So these links are linked for you, as well as anything else that you would like shared from today. This is just scratching the surface, so with any questions, definitely ask me anytime. Email me, katie@esu8.org, and I'd be happy to try and help out. So best of luck, and thanks a lot for tuning in. See y'all later.